The first time my husband said the word divorce, my mother was already dead. Her casket was still open. I was standing at the front of the chapel, one hand pressed against my lower stomach, the other gripping a folded program that had gone damp from my sweat. I was 14 weeks pregnant, not showing enough for strangers to notice, but enough that I felt it constantly, an awareness beneath my skin, a quiet insistence that something was still growing inside me, even as everything else was collapsing. The room smelled like lilies and polished wood. My mother had loved lilies. I hated them now. People sat in neat rows behind me, family friends, distant relatives, co-workers who barely knew her but felt obligated to come. Their faces were soft with sympathy, tilted toward me like I was something fragile that might crack if handled wrong. My husband stood a few feet away, near the aisle. He wasn't beside me. That should have told me something. When the pastor finished speaking and invited anyone who wished to say a few words, I expected silence. My mother had been private. She didn't need speeches. I was already rehearsing how I would thank everyone afterward and leave as quickly as possible. Then my husband stepped forward. I remember thinking, briefly, stupidly, that he was going to talk about my mother. That he was finally going to show up. That maybe this was his way of supporting me. He cleared his throat. "I won't take much time," he said. His voice carried. It always did. Confident, controlled. The same voice he used in meetings, in arguments, in moments where he needed to sound reasonable. "I think honesty matters," he continued, "especially at moments like this." My heart started pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. He turned slightly, not toward me but toward the room. "I want everyone to know that my wife and I are getting a divorce." There it was. Not whispered, not delayed, not private. Announced. A sound moved through the chapel. Not a gasp exactly, more like a collective inhale that never fully let go. I felt my knees lock. For a second, I thought I might actually fall forward, right there beside my mother's casket. I looked at him. He wouldn't meet my eyes. Then I noticed her. She was standing just behind him, close enough that their shoulders touched. Her hand was wrapped around his fingers, like that was the most natural thing in the world. Like this was a moment they were sharing. She wasn't crying. She wasn't even uncomfortable. She was watching me. And when our eyes met, something flickered across her face. Surprise, maybe. Or fear. The room froze. No one spoke. No one moved. Even the baby inside me seemed to go still, as if listening. My husband went on, oblivious or uncaring. I still don't know which. "This isn't the place for details," he said, as if he were doing everyone a favor. But I didn't want there to be confusion later. Confusion. My mother's funeral. My pregnancy. Our marriage. All folded into a single announcement he had apparently rehearsed. I felt heat rise up my neck, then drain away, leaving me cold. I could feel people turning toward me now, some with shock, some with pity, some with the uncomfortable curiosity people have when tragedy multiplies in front of them. I wanted to scream. Instead, I heard myself speak. "What are you doing?" I asked. My voice sounded small in the chapel, too small for what he was destroying. He finally looked at me then. His expression was tight, almost annoyed, like I'd interrupted him. "I told you," he said quietly. "I can't pretend anymore." I glanced at the woman holding his hand. I knew her. Not well, but well enough. The realization landed like a second blow, sharper than the first. Behind me, someone whispered my name. In front of me, my mother lay silent, her face carefully made up to look peaceful, like she hadn't raised me to expect better than this. My husband took a breath, as if preparing to say more. I didn't let him. "This is my mother's funeral," I said. Louder now, clearer. "If you have anything left to say, you can save it." He hesitated, just for a moment. Then the woman beside him tightened her grip on his hand. And that, more than the words, more than the timing, was when I understood something important. This wasn't impulsive. This wasn't grief. This was planned, and the room knew it. So did I. 3 days earlier, I had stood in my mother's kitchen, rinsing a mug she no longer used, while my husband leaned against the counter scrolling through his phone. She had been asleep in the next room then. Hospice had set up a small bed by the window, where the afternoon light came in soft and forgiving. The house smelled like chamomile tea and antiseptic wipes. Everything in it felt temporary. "You don't have to stay," I told him that afternoon. "I know this isn't easy for you." He didn't look up. "I'm fine." He said it the way he always did. Flat, efficient, like an item checked off a list. At the time, I thought it meant commitment, loyalty. Now I understood it was something else entirely. That week had blurred together. Phone calls, paperwork, whispered conversations with nurses. I slept on the couch so I could hear my mother breathe at night. My husband slept upstairs. The door closed. We didn't fight. We didn't talk much at all. I was too tired to notice the gaps. The pregnancy had come as a surprise. Not an accident exactly, more like something that happened while we were distracted by everything else. When I told him, months earlier, he had smiled. He hugged me. He said, "We'll figure it out." I believed him. Looking back, that was the beginning of the distance. Subtle at first, fewer questions, less patience. He started staying later at work. His phone was always face down. When I asked if something was wrong, he said I was stressed. "You're dealing with a lot," he told me. "Don't make it worse by overthinking." So I stopped asking. The night my mother died, he wasn't in the room. He had gone out to get coffee, or air, or space. I don't know. When he came back, it was already over. I was holding her hand, still warm, still mine. He stood in the doorway, unsure where to put himself. "I'm sorry," he said. That was it. The funeral arrangements happened quickly. I let my aunt handle most of it. I signed forms without reading them. I chose flowers because they were what my mother would have chosen. Through all of it, my husband stayed close, but not with me. Always a step behind. Always distracted. The woman at the funeral had appeared the morning of. She arrived early, before most people. She wore black, but not morning black. Sharp black. Intentional. She stood beside my husband like she belonged there. At first, I thought she was a coworker, or a friend of the family I didn't recognize. When I asked him quietly who she was, he said, "Someone I work with." He didn't say her name. I didn't push. I didn't have the energy. Now, standing in the chapel, I could feel every moment I had swallowed rising up at once. Every excuse I had made. Every instinct I had ignored. "This is not appropriate," my aunt said suddenly, stepping forward from the front row. Her voice trembled with anger. "You need to sit down." My husband shook his head. "I just wanted to be honest." Honest. The woman beside him shifted. Her eyes darted around the room now, finally registering the stares, the judgment, the disbelief. She looked less composed than she had a moment ago. Her grip loosened. "Good. Are you leaving her?" Someone whispered behind me, loud enough to be heard. He hesitated, then nodded. "Yes." I felt something inside me go very still. The pastor cleared his throat, uncertain. "Perhaps this conversation—" "No," I said, before anyone else could interrupt. "Let him finish." Every head turned toward me. If he was going to do this here, in front of my mother's body, then I was not going to protect him from the consequences of it. He looked relieved, mistaking my calm for permission. "We've been unhappy for a while," he said. I didn't want to keep lying. "Lying to who?" I asked. He frowned. "To myself, of course." I looked at the woman again. Up close, I recognized her now. She had been at our house once. Months ago. A work dinner. She had laughed too hard at his jokes. I had noticed it then and dismissed it immediately. Because I trusted him. Because I was tired. Because my mother was dying, and I didn't have room for anything else. My hand pressed instinctively to my stomach. The movement wasn't lost on anyone. I saw a few faces change. Someone inhaled sharply. "Does she know you're pregnant?" my cousin asked. The woman stiffened. My husband's jaw tightened. "That's not relevant." It was. It was the only thing in the room that still mattered to me. The woman finally spoke. Her voice was quiet. "You didn't tell me she was pregnant." He turned toward her, startled. "This isn't—" But it was already too late. The room, frozen seconds earlier, had begun to thaw into something sharper. And I realized that whatever control he thought he had just claimed, he was about to lose it. The silence after her words was different from before. Heavier, more focused. The kind that doesn't just witness a moment, it judges it. "You didn't tell me," the woman repeated, louder this time. Her hand slipped out of his. Every eye in the chapel was on them now. Not on me. Not on my mother's casket. On the crack forming right down the middle of whatever story he thought he was controlling. He reached for her again, instinctively, but she took a step back. "I said this isn't the place," he snapped, his calm finally thinning. "You made it the place," she said. Her voice shook, but she didn't lower it. "You brought me here. You stood up there. You said it." I watched his face change in real time. The careful, reasonable mask slipped, replaced by irritation, then calculation. The same expression he used when conversation stopped going the way he'd planned. "She's emotional," he said to the room, gesturing toward her as if she were the problem now. "This is complicated." A few people shifted uncomfortably. Someone coughed. No one nodded. I felt strangely detached, like I was watching a scene from the outside. Maybe grief had already taken everything it could from me, because this betrayal stacked on top of loss, felt sharp but distant. Like a clean cut instead of a bruise. "How long?" I asked. My voice surprised me. It didn't waver. He looked at me like the question annoyed him. "Does it matter?" "Yes," I said. "It matters." The woman answered before he could. 8 months. 8. I did the math without meaning to. 8 months ago, my mother had been diagnosed. 8 months ago, I had spent nights on the phone with doctors while he said he was working late. 8 months ago, I had thrown up every morning and told myself it was stress. The room reacted this time. Not whispers, murmurs, disbelief sliding into something closer to anger. "You're pregnant," my aunt said, turning to him. "And your wife's mother just died." He rubbed his face. "I didn't plan it this way." That might have been the most insulting thing he said all day. The woman looked at me then. Really looked. Her eyes filled, not with shame, but with something like panic. "I swear," she said quickly, "I didn't know about the baby. He said you were separated." I believed her. That was the worst part. "So this," I said, gesturing around us, the casket, the flowers, the stunned faces. "This was what you chose?" He didn't answer, because now there were too many witnesses. My cousin stepped forward. "You should leave," she said. "Not to me. To him." "This isn't your decision," he replied. "No," she said. "It's hers, and she's not the one who should be walking out." For a moment, I thought he might argue. He had always hated losing ground in public. But something in the room had shifted. The quiet had turned against him. The woman took a breath. "I can't do this," she said. "Not like this." She looked at him, waiting for reassurance, an explanation. Something. He opened his mouth. Nothing came out. She shook her head slowly, as if that settled it, then turned and walked down the aisle alone. Her heels echoed once, twice, then disappeared through the chapel doors. He stood there, suddenly empty-handed. For the first time since he'd stepped forward, he looked unsure. "You embarrassed me," he said quietly, turning back to me. I almost smiled. "You announced our divorce at my mother's funeral," I replied. "While I'm pregnant." "That wasn't my intention." "It doesn't matter," I said. You don't get credit for intentions you didn't act on. The pastor cleared his throat again, this time firmer. I think we should take a pause. No one argued. My husband looked around, realizing too late that there was no applause coming. No quiet acceptance, no smooth exit. Let's talk later, he said to me, lowering his voice. Not here. I nodded. You're right. Relief flickered across his face. Not here, I repeated. And not together. His expression hardened. You can't make decisions like this. I placed my hand over my stomach. I already have. I turned back to my mother's casket. To the woman who had raised me to know when silence was strength, and when it was surrender. Behind me, someone touched my shoulder, then another. I didn't look back, because whatever marriage I had lost that day, I had gained something else in its place. Clarity. And this time, I wasn't going to ignore it. The days after the funeral blurred into a quiet I didn't recognize. Not the peaceful kind, more like the stunned silence after something irreversible happens and your body hasn't caught up yet. My husband didn't come home that night. I wasn't surprised. I was almost relieved. I stayed at my mother's house instead, sleeping in my childhood bedroom with the door open, like I used to when I was afraid of storms. The house felt hollow without her. Every sound echoed. The refrigerator hummed too loudly. The floorboards creaked like they were remembering her footsteps. By morning, my phone was full. Missed calls, texts, voicemails. From him, from his sister, asking if we could talk calmly. From a mutual friend reminding me that grief makes people do strange things. From an aunt who said, "Please don't make this harder than it has to be." No one asked how I was feeling. They asked how I was going to respond. I listened to his first voicemail while sitting at my mother's kitchen table, staring at a mug she used every day. "I shouldn't have said it like that," he said. "But you forced my hand." Forced. I deleted it. The second message was longer, more controlled. "We can be civil. For the baby, let's not turn this into something ugly." Ugly, apparently, was a future where I didn't quietly accept being humiliated. That afternoon, I finally let myself cry. Not in public, not in front of anyone who might turn it into advice. Just me, alone, sitting on the floor beside my mother's bed, holding one of her sweaters against my face. I cried for her. Then, unexpectedly, I cried for the woman at the funeral, because I knew exactly how that felt. Realizing too late that the man you trusted had been telling different versions of the truth, depending on who was listening. The next day, I went to my doctor, not because anything was wrong, but because I needed something grounded, something real. The ultrasound screen glowed softly as the technician pointed out a fluttering shape. "There," she said gently. "That's the heartbeat." I stared at it, stunned by how steady it was. Life continuing, unbothered by betrayal. That was when my priorities finished rearranging themselves. When I got home, my husband was waiting on the porch. He stood up when he saw me, like he was greeting a client. "We need to talk." I unlocked the door and stepped inside without answering. After a moment, he followed. "This isn't how I wanted things to happen," he said. "But the marriage has been over for a while. Then why wait until my mother's funeral?" I asked. He hesitated. "I thought it would be final." I turned to him. "You thought it would corner me." His jaw tightened. "I thought you'd understand there was no good time." "There was a worse time," I said. "And you chose it." He rubbed his temples. "You're being emotional." I laughed, short and sharp. "I'm pregnant. My mother just died. You announced our divorce in public with your girlfriend holding your hand. If you expect me to be anything other than emotional, you don't understand the situation you created." He shifted, annoyed now. "You don't have to make me the villain." "I don't," I said. "You did that yourself." He changed tactics. "Let's be practical. We can file quietly. Shared custody. No drama." I looked at him. Really looked. At the man who had decided my grief was an inconvenience and my dignity optional. "You don't get to dictate the terms anymore," I said. "You gave that up." He frowned. "What does that mean?" It means, I said slowly, you'll communicate through my lawyer. And for now, you should leave. His eyes widened. You can't just throw me out? This isn't your house, I replied. And this isn't your moment. He stared at me, waiting for me to soften, to explain, to compromise. I didn't. After he left, I locked the door and slid down against it, breathing hard. My hands were shaking, but underneath that was something solid. Resolve. That night, I made a list, not of grievances, of boundaries. And for the first time since the chapel, I slept without dreaming. Because somewhere between the funeral and the porch, I had accepted the truth. The worst thing had already happened. Everything after this was just me deciding how I would live with it. The lawyer's office smelled like coffee and printer ink. Ordinary, neutral. I like that. Nothing in that room knew who my husband was or what he had done, or how spectacularly he had detonated our life in front of my mother's casket. I told the attorney everything anyway, not with tears, not with drama, just facts. The announcement, the woman holding his hand, the pregnancy, the 8-month affair. She listened without interrupting, her pen moving steadily across a yellow legal pad. When I finished, she looked up at me and said, "You did the right thing asking him to leave." I hadn't realized how much I needed to hear that. "We'll file immediately," she continued, "and we'll document what happened at the funeral. Public behavior matters, especially when custody is involved." Custody. The word landed differently now. Heavy, but grounding. This wasn't about revenge. It was about protection. When I got back to my mother's house, there was a package waiting on the porch. My husband's handwriting. Familiar. Annoyingly neat. Inside were a few things I'd left at our place. Clothes folded with unnecessary precision. My favorite scarf. A note on top. "I hope one day you'll see this was unavoidable." I threw the note away without rereading it. That evening, the calls started again, but not from him. His mother left a voicemail telling me I had handled things poorly. A mutual friend texted that I should consider how hard this is on him. Someone else suggested we all meet for dinner and reset. Like what happened at the funeral was a glitch. I stopped answering. The woman from the chapel reached out 2 days later. A long message. Apologetic. Careful. She said she hadn't known about the pregnancy. She said he told her the marriage was already over. She said she never would have gone to the funeral if she'd known. I believed her. That didn't mean I wanted her in my life. I replied once, briefly, "This isn't something you can fix. Please don't contact me again." She respected that. He didn't. When he realized I wasn't engaging, he escalated. Emails about finances, about timelines, about how amicable would be better for everyone. He framed everything as efficiency, strategy, reasonableness. I saw it for what it was, panic. Because control only works when the other person participates. At my next prenatal appointment, the nurse asked if the father would be attending future visits. "No," I said. She nodded. No judgment, just adjusted the chart. I liked her immediately. Weeks passed. The shock faded. Not the pain, but the disorientation. I stopped replaying the chapel scene every hour. It retreated to the background like a scar you notice only when something brushes against it. One afternoon, I went through my mother's things. Slowly, carefully. In her nightstand drawer, I found a folded letter with my name on it. She had written it weeks before she died. She told me she was proud of me, that she worried I carried too much alone, that she hoped I would always choose myself, even when people tried to make me feel selfish for it. I sat on the floor and cried until my chest hurt, not because she was gone, because she had seen me. My husband showed up again the following week, this time with paperwork. "We need to discuss assets," he said, standing too close. "You're not being cooperative." I laughed. I couldn't help it. "You announced our divorce at my mother's funeral," I said. "Cooperation ended there." He stared at me, incredulous. "You're punishing me." "No," I replied. "I'm responding." He opened his mouth to argue. I closed the door. After that, communication went through lawyers. Clean, cold, effective. I moved out of my mother's house and into a small apartment closer to the hospital. I set up a nursery in the corner of my bedroom. It wasn't big. It didn't need to be. Each night, I rested my hands on my stomach and talked to the baby. About ordinary things, about what our life would look like, about the kind of home we were building. One where no one would ever confuse love with convenience. People asked if I was angry. Sometimes. But mostly I was focused. Because while he had chosen a moment meant for grief to make a declaration about himself, I was choosing something else entirely. I was choosing the future, and I wasn't bringing him with me. By the time my third trimester began, the story had already been rewritten. Just not by me. In his version, the marriage had ended naturally. The funeral incident was described as unfortunate timing. The woman from the chapel became someone who helped him through a difficult period. He spoke in soft edges and passive language, sanding down every sharp corner until the truth barely resembled itself. People repeated it, not maliciously, comfortably. It amazed me how quickly some people accepted a story that required so much forgetting. The custody discussions were brief and tense. He wanted joint everything, decisions, time, authority. He spoke about the baby like a concept, not a person. Something abstract he deserved equal access to because that felt fair. My lawyer listened, then calmly laid out the reality. Pregnancy matters, stability matters, patterns of behavior matter. Public humiliation at a funeral, documented by witnesses, mattered. For the first time since the chapel, he looked uncertain again. "You're making me sound unstable," he said afterward in the hallway, his voice low. "No," I replied. "I'm letting your actions speak." He didn't like that. He tried again with my emotions. Told me the baby would need a father. Told me I was being punitive. Told me I'd regret being inflexible. I watched his mouth move and realized something simple and devastating. He had never once asked how the baby was. Not once. He asked about schedules. He asked about money. He asked about optics. He never asked if the baby kicked, or if I was sleeping, or if I was scared. That told me everything. The birth plan was mine alone. I listed one support person, my aunt, no visitors, no notifications. The hospital staff accepted it without question. When the contractions started, they were quiet at first. Manageable. I took my time packing my bag, folded the last of the baby clothes I'd washed that morning, and left the apartment with a strange sense of calm. I didn't tell him. I didn't owe him the moment. Labor was long, painful, focused. The kind of experience that narrows the world to breath and effort and instinct. Somewhere in the middle of it, I thought of my mother, of how she used to say that some things strip you down to what's essential. She was right. When my baby finally arrived, red-faced and furious at the world, I cried. Not because I was overwhelmed, but because I was certain. Certain that I had done the right thing. Certain that this child would never watch me be diminished to keep someone else comfortable. Certain that love did not require endurance of cruelty. The nurse asked if I wanted to notify the father. "No," I said. She nodded and moved on, like this was not unusual. Like women making clear choices was part of her everyday work. I sent him a message 2 days later, brief, informational. The baby was born, healthy. My lawyer will be in touch regarding next steps. His response came quickly. "You didn't even tell me you were in labor." I stared at the screen, then put the phone down. I didn't respond. The first weeks were exhausting, beautiful, isolating in the way all new beginnings are. I learned the weight of my child in my arms, the sound of their breath when they slept, the quiet confidence that came from knowing I could do hard things without an audience. My mother would have loved this baby. I saw her everywhere, in the curve of a hand, in the way the baby calmed when I sang softly off-key. Sometimes I imagined telling her what had happened, imagined her listening, nodding, then saying something practical and grounding. "Good," she would have said. "Now you know." He tried once more to appeal directly to me through a handwritten note delivered by his sister. It talked about forgiveness, about new beginnings, about how holding on to anger would only hurt the child. I returned it unopened. Because boundaries don't need explanations. They need enforcement. By the time the custody agreement was finalized, structured, supervised at first, clear and firm, I felt steady. Not triumphant. Not bitter. Steady. He had wanted control. He had chosen spectacle. I had chosen protection. And that choice, once made, didn't waver. The first time my child smiled, my husband wasn't there. It wasn't intentional. I didn't think, this moment will exclude him. It just happened that way, the way most real milestones do. Quietly, without witnesses, without announcements. I was sitting on the edge of my bed, rocking slowly, the afternoon light slanting through the blinds. My baby's face softened, eyes unfocused, mouth opening into something uncertain and new. Then it happened. A real smile. Brief, unmistakable. I laughed out loud before I could stop myself. In that moment, the chapel disappeared. The whispers, the lilies, the woman holding his hand. All of it faded behind something solid and undeniable. Life had continued. Not the life I thought I was building, but one that belonged to me. The custody arrangement began a few weeks later. Supervised visits, twice a week. A neutral location. Clear rules. He arrived early the first time, dressed carefully, trying to look calm, trying to look prepared. He held our child awkwardly, like someone afraid of doing it wrong. He spoke in a soft voice I didn't recognize. Performative. Gentle in a way that felt practiced. I watched from across the room, arms folded, heart steady. This wasn't about punishment, it was about reality. He hadn't shown up when it mattered most. Now, he was learning that presence wasn't something you could demand retroactively. Over time, the visits became routine. He stopped trying to talk to me directly. The lawyers handled logistics. Schedules settled. Tension eased into something distant and manageable. The woman from the funeral never appeared again. I heard through someone else that they didn't last, that she'd left when she realized how easily he rewrote history. I felt nothing about it. Not satisfaction, not sadness. Just confirmation. My life grew quieter in the best way. Morning walks with a stroller. Evenings that ended early. Friends who showed up without asking what side I was on. I learned how little energy I needed to survive, and how much I had wasted before trying to keep someone else comfortable. On the anniversary of my mother's death, I went to the cemetery alone. I brought my baby with me, bundled against the cold. I stood there and told her everything. Not the anger, not the humiliation, just the truth. That I had chosen myself, that I had chosen her grandchild, that I had stopped accepting love that required silence. I imagined her listening the way she always had, quietly, attentively, then nodding once, like that settled it. People still ask about the funeral sometimes. They phrase it carefully, like they're afraid of reopening something fragile. I tell them the truth. Yes, I say. He announced our divorce there. Yes, I was pregnant. Yes, it was exactly as bad as it sounds. Then I stopped talking. Because the rest of the story isn't about him. It's about what happened after. About the moment I realized that grief doesn't excuse cruelty, that love doesn't demand humiliation, that anyone willing to turn your worst day into a stage was never standing with you to begin with. My child is older now, curious, loud, unapologetically present. Sometimes, when they laugh, I hear my mother in it. Sometimes, when they sleep curled against me, I think about how close I came to believing I had to endure anything for the sake of keeping a family together. I'm glad I didn't. Some people think strength looks like forgiveness, like reconciliation, like finding a way to make things palatable again. Sometimes, strength looks like walking away in the middle of a room full of witnesses. Sometimes, it looks like refusing to explain yourself to people who watched and did nothing. At my mother's funeral, my husband thought he was ending something. He was wrong. He was revealing it. And in doing so, he gave me the clarity I didn't know I needed. I didn't lose my family that day. I lost the illusion that I needed to stay small to keep one. And that, quietly, undeniably, changed everything.